Peace, family. This is your brother, Brother Willie Muhammad, and once again, you're listening to a broadcast of Classes in Session. And we're coming to you from WBOK 1230 AM, where it's real talk for real time. So if you have any type of event, as I always say when I open up the show, if you have any type of event that you want to help inform the public about, or you have a business that you want to advertise, I strongly encourage you to reach out to WBOK and use their services. I'm quite sure there is a advertising package that can help fit your budget. So reach out to them. This is a radio program or radio station that has and continues to support our community and those issues, bring attention to those issues that are important to us. So we thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you enjoyed last week's recording. We hope that you enjoy everyone that we have, because we want to talk about topics that help to enlighten us, inspire us, and motivate us to get involved in something to better our community. So today we are attempting to do the same. We have a dynamic sister with us on the show today, and we're going to be talking about the topic of breastfeeding. She does work in that field, and if you are familiar with breastfeeding, or you may be listening, you may be a breastfed baby, or was a breastfed baby yourself, you know the benefits. And if not, if you're listening and you and your family are considering having children, or you have children right now, or recently had a child, and you're interested, or you may be considering breastfeeding, I hope this interview helps to answer some questions and to get you involved in something that is very beneficial to the mother and to the child. So for those we have our sister, her name is, Sister Meshawn Siddiq. How you doing, Sister Meshawn?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me on today.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. So for the listening audience who may not be familiar with you, can you tell them who you are and what it is you exactly do?
Yes. So I am Sister Meshawn. I was raised in New Orleans, and the topics I'm most passionate about, or my mission, or why I feel like I am here, is to help more black women not only breastfeed, but to improve the birth outcomes of the babies in our community and the maternal mortality rates in our community as well. So I've been working in the maternal and child health field for about 14 years ago now. And I started in the field. I always had a passion for helping people, and health was the route that I chose. But after giving birth to my first daughter, I realized how difficult it was to breastfeed, and how I didn't really have the family support to breastfeed. My grandmother thought that it was nasty. My mother never breastfed. So no one in my family or in my immediate circle of friends could help me. And so after going through the trials that I went through with breastfeeding, and looking into our community and seeing how no one is breastfeeding and how our babies are dying in our community, I kind of did more research and started working in the field, and I just can't get away from it. It's something that I'm most passionate about. So what I do childbirth education classes in our community, and I also do breastfeeding education and breastfeeding support. The name of my foundation, or my organization, is HER Institute, which stands for Health, Education, and Research. Working with families to improve the health of our community through educating them and doing more research, because in order for us to change our community, we really need to research and understand what we're doing wrong and how we can improve on it.
That's powerful. And how has your work been received in the community?
Well, it is, so like I said, I've been doing this for 14 years. So when we started working on it in 2003, there were very few breastfeeding professionals in our community. And so we just kept at it. We started getting with doctors, nurses, and then like patient consultants in our community until we started getting more and more awareness. Now there's a lot of breastfeeding resources in our community 14 years later. There are support groups all over. There are more and more organizations that are working to improve it, but we still have a long way to go. So some people are very receptive to it, but we still have not as much awareness in the community that we need.
Yes, that's interesting, and it's so important that more and more people begin to start finding out about the benefits, and like you said, even also the overall health, especially as it relates to our community. So, why do you believe that breastfeeding is, if I can say this, the best thing for mothers to do?
Well, when we talk about the health benefits. So there are a lot of health benefits for the baby. Of course, babies that are breastfed, they have less colds, pneumonia. It's also a lower risk of having type 1 diabetes for the baby. And babies there's a high incidence of SIDS. SID is sudden infant death syndrome. So babies are dying and mothers are not knowing why the babies are dying. But babies who are breastfed have a lower risk of dying from SIDS. Babies that are breastfed have lower obesity rates. So there are a lot of health benefits to the baby. But some women don't know, or we don't understand often, that there is benefits for the mother as well. So women who breastfeed, of course, you lose the weight. It's easier to lose weight from breastfeeding, so you can get back to that pre-pregnancy rate, which is weight, which is very important for us as women. We want to keep our figures together. But women who breastfeed also, they have a lower risk of having breast cancer and cervical cancer, which is really important in our community as well. Now, we talk about the health benefits, but there are also financial benefits to breastfeeding as well. So mothers who breastfeed, they don't have to buy formula, they don't have to buy bottles. As far as health, going to the doctors, babies who are breastfed have a lower number of visits to the doctor. So it's financial benefits for the family, and there are health benefits as well.
Wow, that was something. Now, I heard about helping women to lose the post-pregnancy weight, but that was the first time hearing that breastfeeding also has an impact on the chances of mothers in regards to cervical cancer. Now, you talked about the health benefits of it. What about the intellectual and even the emotional benefits of the breastfeeding? That's what we've been talking about, the impacts of it on the mother and the children, but some more specific impacts of it, the intellectual and emotional benefits of breastfeeding for the baby and the mother. What are they?
Well, for the babies who are breastfed, there are studies to show that they have a higher IQ than babies who are formula fed. And then the other thing that we want to talk about with breastfeeding, when you talk about the emotional bond, there has been a study, or there was this research done in a hospital, and they were saying about, I believe it was in a European hospital. I won't misquote the country, but there were babies who were not touched, and then there were babies who were touched. And those babies who were touched, they had better emotional behavior development than those who were not touched. Now, with breastfeeding, every time you feed that baby, there's that bond that's happening with the mother and baby. You look at the baby is looking in the mother's eyes. The mother is talking to the baby. It's time for the mother to unwind. So emotionally, she has the time to kind of just sit down and be still. And that baby, it builds that sense of security during that breastfeeding. Well, we find that babies that are formula fed, because we have this society where we're go, 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 go. If you are giving the baby the bottle, women or families are propping the bottles up with pillows. So they're not getting that emotional bond that they need with mother and father. And I want to say, of course, fathers don't breastfeed, but we're showing that there needs to be that bond with fathers as well. So that bond that the mother has with the baby, it also can happen with the father as well, and that the father can do skin-to-skin touch with the baby. So we're increasing that emotional security for that child. And that may have a lot to do with why the IQ is greater as well, because those babies are confident because they know that parents are there for them. Some people, there's a misperception that babies that are breastfed are whiny and that they have to be attached to mother and child, attached to the mother, but that's not the case. Those babies that are whining is for other reasons, and it's not the breastfeed.
Wow. That's interesting. So when I hear people, when we talk about breastfeeding and people mention the breast milk in regards to the formula, what's the big issue with the formula that people will say that the breast milk is better?
Well, so when you think about the name of it, it's called formula. And it's a chemical that is made up to kind of imitate milk. So they try to put in different type of chemicals, and it's going to produce a growth in the baby. But breast milk, it is made for the child. When you think about all animals of the earth, especially mammals, let me say that, they all breastfeed their babies. So you have cows, you have dogs, you have cats. All of those animals breastfeed their child. You don't find that a cow gives its baby cat's milk, or a dog gives the baby cat's milk. So we're the only animal that actually give our baby something other than that. So breast milk, there's enough fat in it, there's enough water in it, there's nutrition in the milk that gives the baby what it needs to grow. The other thing that people don't realize about breast milk is actually the first vaccine. Mother actually passes on their antibodies. So if a mom gets the cold through pregnancy or prior to pregnancy or while she's breastfeeding, those immunities that she builds up, she's going to pass that on to the baby. So you'll find that sometimes mothers who breastfeed, they may get a cold, but those babies don't get cold. So you don't have the runny nose babies when they are breastfed, because they're getting not only the nutrients, but they're getting the antibodies from the mother.
Wow. So in your line of work and doing this work for like 14 years and counting, what are some of the challenges that new mothers face when they begin to attempt to breastfeed? Because you mentioned some of the personal things that you had to overcome from within your family. Well, what are some of the things that you are seeing that mothers are facing, and what advice do you give them to help them to overcome such challenges?
So when you think about anything, most of our life skills that we learn, whether it's tying a shoe, writing, we learn all of those skills from home, from our mother or our father or aunt, uncle, sister, and brother. Breastfeeding is a lost art in our community. Like I said, my mother didn't, my grandmother did, so they couldn't teach me those skills. So one of the things that the reason why we have low breastfeeding rates in America, black women, only about 44% of us are actually breastfeeding our babies. So we don't have the support. We don't have the education. Breastfeeding is easy for the baby. They come out actually knowing how to breastfeed. There are studies that actually show this, and actually from my own personal experience, once a baby is born, if you just lay that baby on the belly, the baby is going to crawl up, not on hands and knees, of course, but will crawl up and latch on to the mom. But mothers, it's a skill that we have to be taught. So the first thing that I recommend women to do is to get some type of education on breastfeeding, learning how to hold the baby, to latch onto the baby, because it's something different. It's an uncomfortable feeling at first, but she must get some type of training. And it doesn't mean that she has to go to a class if she can't afford it or if she can't find the time to, but she needs to find someone that can actually show her how to breastfeed. So once she makes the decision to breastfeed, then she needs to get the support that she needs. So she needs to talk to her family members, to talk to the baby's father, to see what their decision as far as breastfeeding. Because one of the things as far as support, because there are challenges to breastfeeding, like you talked about, but if you find that grandmother supports the mom, if dad supports the mom, she can get over those little hurdles. So it's the education, the support from family members, and also talking to her doctor about it, And then also, lastly, because most of us have to return to work and school after we give birth, talking to your employer so you can find a space to pump when you return to work. So education and support is really key for the woman.
When you look at the information regarding breastfeeding, and I would imagine you come across studies from time to time that show what are the breastfeeding percentages in various communities, racial communities or ethnic groups. What ethnic groups do you see that have the highest percentage of mothers who breastfeed, and what do you think? What would you attribute that to?
Well, of course, in America, we have that white women breastfeed a lot more than black women, and then behind that, we have Latino women. And I want to say something about our Latino women, that we're finding that after generations of them coming to America, that their breastfeeding rates are lower as well.
Wow.
So what do I attribute it to in the black community? Well, like I told you earlier, my grandmother, when I breastfed my first daughter, my grandmother looked at me and said, "You old nasty thing." And I really couldn't think of why she would call me that. And then I thought about it or did some research of wet nursing in the African-American community. As descendants of slaves, our ancestors were required not only to breastfeed their babies, but they were also required to breastfeed the slave masters' children as well. And so there was a disconnect. And sometimes they couldn't breastfeed their children. They only could breastfeed the slave masters' children, which is why we started to supplement earlier on in our community. It was acceptable because we had to give our children, we couldn't breastfeed them. We had to give them whatever scraps that we could find, cornmeal and all of that type of stuff to breastfeed our children. So we're talking about generations of people that are disconnected from breastfeeding. So there's a stigma that's attached to it. Also, breasts have become sexualized in the world, not only in our community. So you can see women on TV with cleavage, and it's a very sexual thing. Some women give their breasts over to their spouses or to their significant others as a sexual object. So there's a disconnect between using your breast as what they were made for, or one of the things they were made for, to feed your baby. After Hurricane Katrina, just to add to that, after Hurricane Katrina, I did focus groups in our community about breastfeeding. And one of the women was sharing a story about a woman who delivered her baby under the Claiborne Bridge. And that woman was crying for the federal government to give formula for this child. She was crying, they wouldn't give me formula. And when asked the question, well, why didn't you breastfeed? Her response was, I didn't know I could breastfeed. So in a time where you don't have access to any running water, you don't have access to a store, you give birth, and women just don't know that that's what your breast is for, that you can actually breastfeed your child. So there's this huge disconnect between using your breast for breastfeeding and it being a sexual object as well. So I would attribute it to a lot of things, from generations of not having people who breastfeed, using your breast as a sexual object. And then another thing that we have going against us, many of us as black women, we are working women. We don't have the luxury of staying home more than 2 to 4 weeks. And so some women may choose not to breastfeed because she knows she's going to have to go back to work. So why start something that you cannot continue?
Wow, that's amazing, and especially that story you just shared about what the lady experienced after Katrina. So we're coming up on the first break, but I want to come back and we'll talk some more about some of those aspects that you just mentioned. But it's very, very informative. So for those who are listening, this is your Brother Willie Muhammad, and this is WBOK 1230 AM Class in Session. We're heading to our first break, and we'll be back with Sister Meshawn Siddiq, and she's talking about specifically breastfeeding, but overall the health of women. But this is very informative. Let somebody else know who this information can benefit, and tell them to tune in, and we'll be back on the other half. So stay tuned. Peace. We're back. This is your Brother Willie Muhammad, and this is Classes in Session. We're here at WBOK 1230 AM, where it's real talk for real time. And we have our sister here, Sister Meshawn Siddiq, and she's talking about breastfeeding, the numerous benefits, and also talking about, she shared words about the stigmas and the obstacles that people face. And she shared a very powerful story about a mother that after Katrina, while under the bridge, she gave birth to a child, and she was, she wanted formula and the other things to help to provide for this child, and she did not know that she was already equipped to be able to provide at least the food for the baby that she just gave birth to. So that's powerful. Now, you mentioned something about how with our Latino or Hispanic brothers and sisters, how you're finding, what the research is showing, that once they come to America, that there's a decrease in their practice of breastfeeding. What countries, how is the practice of breastfeeding more prevalent in countries outside of America?
Oh, most definitely. America probably has one of the lowest breastfeeding rates in the world. So not only are they breastfeeding in South America, in Africa, in the continent of Africa, in South America, but in Europe as well. We are finding that not only our Latino brothers and sisters, but our African brothers and sisters who are immigrating to America, after one generation, their breastfeeding rates, especially Africans, are almost identical to those of African Americans. And you can attribute that a lot to what we do in our workplace. So the recommendation is to breastfeed as soon as within 1 hour of the baby being born, and to breastfeed exclusively for 6 months, and then to continue on to 1 year with supplementation, meaning some foods for the baby. But in America, we're not doing that. Our babies are not being fed breast milk. And so it's really appalling. Not only are our breastfeeding rates poor, but we're finding also that our infant mortality rates in America, and especially for blacks, and blacks in particular in the South, our babies are dying and our mothers are dying during childbirth in America. So there's a lot that's happening to us, women of childbearing years, that we need to take a look at.
Now, you mentioned also about how one of the factors that contributes to women not breastfeeding their child is that they have to go back to work, So what advice do you give to working mothers to help them to overcome that challenge?
So one of the things I just want to mention is that just any amount of breastfeeding is great. When a woman, when the baby is first born, there's something called colostrum. We call it liquid gold. It's that first antibody or that first vaccine that the mother gives to the baby. So if she can only initiate and go 1 week of breastfeeding, that is fine. So what I would say for a woman that is pregnant or a family that is pregnant, set a goal. If you want to go for 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months, whatever that goal is, set that as your first goal. So if she has to return to work, she should also look into one, like I talked about a little bit earlier, is talking to her employer. So wherever she's going back to work, talking to her employer, when I come back to work, I want to pump. And is there a space, not in the bathroom, because none of us would actually eat in the bathroom, so we wouldn't ask the mom to feed her baby in the bathroom, nor would we ask her to pump the milk that she needs for the baby in the bathroom as well. So what I would recommend is once she talks to her employer, just telling them that I need 2 breaks, 15-minute breaks to pump, and then a place to store the milk. So if there's a refrigerator, or she can bring her own cooler. And most breast pump companies, they provide a small little storage cooler. So if the employer doesn't provide it, it's okay. She'll have the tools that she needs. Most insurance companies, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, most insurance companies now pay for breast pumps. And so what she would need to do is to get a breast pump, either from an insurance company. If she's on WIC, they offer free breast pumps for women that are returning to work and returning to school. Get that breast pump and decide when she's going back to work, and within 2 weeks of her going back to work, she should start pumping that breast milk and putting it in the freezer to store for her baby. Breast milk in the freezer or in the refrigerator lasts for an extensive amount of time. In the freezer, it'll last for a couple of months, and in the refrigerator, it'll last a couple of days. So she should pump ahead of time and be ready for when she returns to work.
Now, you mentioned about in regards to the role that fathers can play, What are some specific things that fathers or the male members of a family can do to help support a mother who is breastfeeding?
Right. So, and I would say it'll start during the pregnancy period. I think pregnancy, sometimes we disconnect the father from pregnancy or the birthing process altogether. And I think that's what we need to remove, that we need to start doing. That during the prenatal period, while the woman is pregnant, that there should be a bonding with mother and father, talking about the baby, talking about their goals and plans, loving up on each other as a family. And what a father can do is during that birthing period, just supporting that mother, whatever she needs. She needs to verbalize what her needs are, and him being there to encourage her throughout that process. So what a father can do during for breastfeeding, like I said, to support the mother, because there are benefits to him as well. He won't have to issue out as much money for bottles, formula, going to the doctor to visit. So some mothers, if they don't co-sleep, we find that some fathers will go and get the baby for the mother and bring the baby to the mom, change the baby's diaper, because she's going to do most of the feeding for the baby. That's how he can support her. Now, if she can pump, and I know to give mom a break, when she pumps, he can hold the baby and give the baby the bottle, and then allowing time for mom to relax for a little while. So encouraging words help, and then support her in any way as possible, changing the diaper, going to get the baby. Nighttime feedings are so much easier, so if he just supports her during that process, it'll go a long way.
Now, I was blessed to have the opportunity to participate in an event that you had on last Tuesday here in the city of New Orleans at the Ashe Arts and Cultural Center. And you have these type of meetings on a weekly basis. Can you share with the listening audience, what takes place at these meetings, what's the purpose of these meetings, and even how, if they want to participate or be involved, what would they need to do?
Okay, yes. So the program or the initiative that you're talking about is Birthright. Birthright is an initiative of Ashe Cultural Arts Center. And the program was started, just like you said, because we need to support women. We need to educate them. So we have weekly meetings on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 where moms or moms with babies can come, or even women who are not pregnant, just would like to get pregnant one day. They can come in. We talk about breastfeeding topics, birthing topics. We've even talked about education, returning to school for mom and for the children. We've also talked about cloth diapers. So whatever topic from preconception into a small child we talk about with the women. We provide education to them, but it's also a way for women to share resources in the community. So we have that every Tuesday at Ashe Cultural Arts Center, and women can just stop in. They don't have to sign up to participate in the program. If they want to call, they can call Ashe Cultural Arts Center at 504-569-9070. And, of course, Ashe is at 1712 Aretha Castle Haley Boulevard. So we have the support group for women, but we find that just not educating the women and supporting them is just not enough. So we have an advocacy component of the program as well, where we're reaching out to workplaces, we're reaching out to schools where there are teachers, and we are reaching out to churches and mosques so that they can make their workplaces and their places of worship first food friendly, because we want them to encourage mothers just to be that support when she returns. As a breastfeeding woman, sometimes they're not places, you don't know what places that will be comfortable to breastfeed in. And although there is a Louisiana law that says that you cannot tear a woman away for breastfeeding, you can make her leave your restaurant or whatever establishment, any place of public accommodation she's allowed to be in. But we want to promote it more in those places so that women know that this workplace or this restaurant really welcomes those women here. So we do advocacy as well. And something else that I'm really proud of, we're trying to put more positive images of breastfeeding women in our community. So we had a photo shoot in August where photographer C. Freedom did the first supper. So we invited women that were breastfeeding to come, and the scene was set up like the biblical Last Supper, and women were allowed to sit, talk, and take some pictures. And so we do different photo opportunities, pop-up photo shops for women to come to while they're pregnant or while they're breastfeeding, just because we need to change the image of breastfeeding in our community so people know that it's acceptable to do it whether you're covered or you're not covered.
From your experience and study of dealing with breast, New Orleans, when it comes to being a breast, if this is the right terminology, a breast-friendly type of city.
You said, do I think that
a breastfeeding-friendly type of city?
We're not quite there yet, but we do have some places that are really doing their thing. So Ashe Cultural Arts Center is actually renovating right now to open what is going to be called a Mama Lounge, where women could come and have a nice, comfortable, beautiful space to nurse. So they'll be that gold standard of what we would want other places of accommodation to do for women in our community. From my understanding, New Orleans Airport has a mother's room. And there are different schools in this community also that are breastfeeding friendly. So we're working on it. We need to do more with making different places more breastfeeding friendly. Now, I would say that most of our hospitals in this area are becoming baby friendly. And what baby friendly is that they are no longer giving out formula packets, which is important. When you have a hurdle with breastfeeding, if you have that free formula, sometimes a woman would just give up on breastfeeding and give the baby formula. So the hospitals are no longer giving free formula. They have lactation consultants at the hospital to help the women. They also have breastfeeding classes in the community as well. One of the things, if I can add right here, Brother Willie, that we are working to do with Ashe Cultural Arts Center and New Orleans Baby Cafe is to get more women of color or more black women to become lactation consultants. Interesting enough, as many black people live in New Orleans, there's only 3 lactation consultants that are Black in our community and none that are Latino or of color. So what we're working, some may say, why is that important? Well, breastfeeding is a real intimate issue, and as a woman, you don't really want to be bare chest to anyone you don't know, but to have someone of color, someone that understands your struggle is very important. So we're working to get more Black women to become lactation consultants or lactation counselors so that we can have the support we need in the hospital setting and in the community.
Wow. Do you find that some nurses sometimes are not too inclined to breastfeeding?
Well, I think it's not that they're not inclined to breastfeeding. They're not inclined, and doctors as well, they're not inclined to talk to a Black woman about breastfeeding. One of the doctors who I would consider a strong breastfeeding advocate actually told me that she is reluctant to talk to Black women about it for fear that they may not respond in an appropriate manner. So I think that some doctors and healthcare providers just shy away from that topic of talking to Black women about it. And they don't really know culturally how to talk to us about it. So there's a barrier that's there that we need to break down as well to show providers how they should talk to Black women and just get more Black providers to actually promote breastfeeding among their patients as well.
Well, if there was someone who was interested in becoming like a lactation specialist, like what would they do? How would they begin?
There are trainings that we offer in the community. One will be happening in January. They can contact us at Ashe at 569-9070. So what a woman would have to do or a person would have to do to become a lactation counselor or consultant is, one, do the training. Most trainings take 1 week, and then volunteer in a hospital setting or in place different support groups working with women who are breastfeeding. To volunteering some hours. It doesn't cost much money. It just requires some time.
That's interesting, man. That something that we have to get more people have to become more informed about it. How have you been received by the religious communities, the churches, the mosques, and the synagogues, and different places like that?
Well, I think the biggest issue with churches and mosques or people in general, because they don't work in birthing and breastfeeding, they think that they are far removed. And I would have to say they open their doors once they know that they have a role. And so church members, pastors, imams, ministers, just actually talking about the topic is important. So in August, we consider August World Breastfeeding Month. So I think churches and ministers, what they can do is just talk about breastfeeding during that month, just so that we can have more people that are aware about breastfeeding. And as a man or a woman, if you see a woman on the streets that's pregnant, congratulate her on her being pregnant, and I would compliment her. I think that women sometimes, because we gain weight, we don't have the confidence, but complimenting her on what she's doing, that she's doing something great, that she's beautiful. And the other thing is planting the seed about breastfeeding. So asking the mother, have you decided what you're going to feed the baby? And if she says no, say please consider breastfeeding. So if that's all a person does, that's very important because you're planting that seed. So if we have the churches that are planting the seed by talking about breastfeeding, having a breastfeeding or first food-friendly room for the mother when she decides to breastfeed, that's one thing that we can do. But then after that, you're going to kind of pass it on to the doctor. So if the minister talks about it, the church is breastfeeding friendly, and then she goes to the doctor's office, and the doctor says the same thing. Are you going to breastfeed your baby? She says yes or no. He plugs her into the classes. And then when she goes to the hospital, there's a lactation consultant. And then on the back end, there's support groups like Birthright, that are there to help the woman throughout the week. So we all have our role that we can play in the process, whether it's just planting a seed, being there to support her, or providing the education and the tools that she needs to actually breastfeed.
And if there are any pastors or any imams or any people over places of worship or any organizations or schools, can you give them your information again so they can get in contact with you if they're interested in having you come on and talk more about breastfeeding, or even if there's some others? Can you give your information again?
Yes. So our phone number is 504-569-9070, and the email address is NOLA, NOLA, birthright, BIRTH, right is RITE, @gmail.com, NOLAbirthright@gmail.com. And so we provide so much information for mothers and fathers and businesses. And one of the things that I actually want to add to mothers about breastfeeding is that there's so many resources out there. I think that women shy away. They think that, this is something that I can do, and then when there's a hurdle there, they want to just give up on it. But there are so many resources, and I would say reach out to whoever it is in your community, and we'll be there. I mean, I do home visits. I've actually gone to houses for women any time of day, in the rain, to actually help them with breastfeeding. WIC actually provides free pumps for women who are returning to work and school, but also they provide extra stipends, food stipends for fresh fruits and vegetables for women who are choosing to breastfeed. And I had one mother of mine who couldn't get to WIC in a timely manner and needed to pump. And I had to go to her home and to actually show her how to hand express her breast milk. So sometimes babies have a difficult time latching on. And this mother decided that she wanted to breastfeed for 6 months. So I went there and I showed her how she can hand express, and she did a wonderful job. The baby is breastfeeding well after she was able to hand express milk.
Now, you mentioned a term earlier. You said liquid gold. I like rap music. Not all rap music, but on his song Jay-Z, on his album 444, he talks about, there's a line where he says he's watching his wife in the front room feeding the child liquid gold. So that's breast milk?
Yes, it is, that breast milk. So the first milk that actually comes in with the mom is called colostrum. It's jam-packed with a lot of nutrients and a lot of antibodies. And when a woman pumps it out, it actually has a yellowish tint. So that's where we've called it liquid gold. So, of course, those of us who are breastfeeding advocates, when we heard him say that, we were screaming, because that's exactly what it is. And any woman who pumps breast milk, she'll call it her liquid gold because it's so priceless, the work that you put into it, that you give to your baby, because nothing compares to it.
Wow. So I didn't know if there was some type of cereal or whatever, so he's talking about that. And that's something, too, that, they use celebrities so much to promote different products. In your effort to this awareness campaign for breastfeeding, have you considered probably reaching out to some local or even national celebrities who have breastfed to help them to get the word out, and maybe a campaign you have organized?
We would love to. I haven't directly myself, but if you can help with that, we would love that. Years ago, there was a campaign. I think WIC was a part of it. Michael Jordan, his mother actually breastfed him. So there was a campaign going around probably over a decade ago with him breastfeeding. So any of those superstars who actually breastfeed, we're all very excited because it's a decision to do it. I know that Serena Williams, from my understanding, is breastfeeding her baby. So all of that is great, and we would love to be a part of a campaign that not only show women breastfeeding, but Black women breastfeeding as well, because it says how important it is to be that these people are actually taking time of their busy schedule to actually breastfeed the baby. So those of us who are working women, we're very busy as well, but it's something that we should at least try as well.
Can you share with us some of the success stories that you have witnessed and played a part in, where you were helping young mothers who may have had a hesitancy or fear about breastfeeding, and you helped them to overcome it, and now they're successful?
Well, one of the most recent ones that I'm very proud of, we had a mom that came to our birthright support group. We talked about breastfeeding. We gave her some information on breastfeeding, and she made the decision to breastfeed. Her baby was born 2 months early. Now, prematurity or babies being born early is something that's increasing also in our country. But what they are finding is that babies who are born prematurely, they actually need the breast milk. It's a life or death situation for those babies. And so the baby was born 1 pound, 10 ounces. So he's so small that he can't latch on, or actually he can't do much skin-to-skin contact. His mother has been pumping breast milk for this baby. He was born 1 pound, 10 ounces.
Wow.
And now he's almost 3 pounds. But she's been breastfeeding every 2 hours. Her pump broke, and she continued to continued to pump. She called me because she had a defaulted pump where it was actually tearing her nipples. And she decided she's like every hurdle. Just imagine as a person having to be hooked up to a machine for every 2 hours to provide something not only that's good for your baby. You know, we say, oh, fruits and vegetables are good for us. But the breast milk in this case is a life or death situation for this baby. So I'm extremely proud of this mother who's continuing to pump, provide the best for her baby. That's one of the great stories. Oh, my goodness, there's so many. So I also have a mom with twins who's been breastfeeding, and she's been a huge she's doing the same thing. So breastfeeding twins is another dynamic. You can't often breastfeed them at the same time. So a mom with twins, until she learns how to do it, she'll have to breastfeed one for 20 minutes and then breastfeed another for 20 minutes. And then every 2 or 3 hours she has to do this. Now, I know this might sound like a lot for some people, but these are abnormal situations. The normal mother, she'll breastfeed every so many hours, put the baby down, and move on. But what's most important about these women, they're getting over the hurdles of breastfeeding to provide the very best. And in one situation, like I said, it's a life or death situation. I also want to share a story about a man who actually shared at one of our luncheons the story of his twins who was actually born prematurely. And he had heard over a decade ago, actually, Minister Farrakhan speaking, and he said that although he's not a Muslim, he said, I just remember Farrakhan saying that a sick woman's milk is better than formula. And so after he heard that, he said, whenever I have children, my wife is gonna breastfeed. So he wasn't even married at the time. But over a decade later, he got married. His wife had twins prematurely, and they breastfed. And he said, thanks to breast milk, his twins were able to survive as well. So there are a lot of great stories out there, and that we should be proud of in our community.
Well, we're coming to the close of the show, and what we'll do, I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll also close with you repeating your information. What out of this 14-year experience, what has been the most rewarding part of this work for you?
I would have to say seeing the change in our community. Going from when we started, it was two of us working on breastfeeding as far as Black professionals. And then to see it grow where we started a coalition, and that coalition is still in existence. So I think the biggest thing that I'm proud of, that is something that I can say that I'm skilled at and that I'm making a change in the community, that people know that if you need help with breastfeeding or birthing, that I'm a resource for them, but also seeing that women who were just, I guess you can say, regular women, now they are lactation counselors, and they are also making the change in the community. So now it is a group of us, breastfeeding advocates and breastfeeding Nazis, that are working to make a change in our community. And although some may not think that breastfeeding is as important of an issue, it is the foundation. It is the nutritional foundation for our families, and also it's the emotional, behavioral foundation for our families, because it's a positive experience that's going to lead on to positive parenting as well.
Wow. So in closing, if you can you give the listeners your contact information again so they can reach out to you if they would like to have you come speak or even just utilize your services?
Okay, so the number you can call is 504-569-9070 and nolabertright@gmail.com. And I'm at two places in our community on a weekly basis. On Tuesdays, I'm at Ashe Cultural Arts Center from 5 to 6, 1712 Aretha Casa Haley Boulevard. And on Wednesdays, I am at NOLA Baby Cafe from 1 to 3 p.m., and that's at 4747 Earhart Boulevard at NBEC, which stands for the National Birth Equity Collaborative. So I'm there.
And your own company is Her. Can you mention that?
Yes. So my company is called Her Institute. My email is Meshawn, MESHAWAN, at forherinstitute.org.
And are you on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
I am on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, yes. So Sister Meshawn.
Okay. And if you can just spell that again. Is it sister spelled out?
No, just you can look for me, Meshawn, MESHAWN, on Twitter and on Facebook as well, For Her Institute, FORHER Institute.
Okay. Well, we thank you, Sister Meshawn, for taking time out from your busy schedule to inform us about the benefits of breastfeeding, and we hope to have you back on the show again to talk more about it. So we thank you for, as I said again, for taking the time out. And also for our listeners, thank you all for tuning in to WBOK 1230 AM, Classes in Session. And this is your Brother Willie Muhammad, and you all can hear from us again on next week. So thank you and peace.
Thank you.